All right, we are live again. Everyone, welcome. This is the Calling All Men Summit. Let me get my microphone going on here. I am Michael Sky. Welcome back. All week long, we are talking to great men and mentors of men who, support men in facing the many crises and challenges that we as men face in today's world. And over on the main website, callingallmensummit.com, we have a daily theme, and today is day 6 of 7. Today we're talking about isolation and men's work. And just so happens, our next guest here on the facebook.com live stream, facebook.com/calling all men summit, we're talking to another gentleman about the isolation, the crisis of isolation in modern masculinity. And welcome to everyone who may be watching from Soma Miller's channel and Hans Komain's channel. Hans is my co-host here out of Medellin. I am in Nairobi, and our guest is hailing from the northwest of the U.S. Yes, so our next guest, his coaching and men's programs skillfully guide men through the aspirations and pitfalls of the modern masculine developmental journey in a way that is both practical and transformational. His methodology is rooted in aligning one's core values and tapping into the unconditioned essence of true selfhood, a process deeply influenced by his own journey of self discovery, fatherhood, and entrepreneurship. His empathic and insightful coaching helps men navigate through layers of social conditioning to achieve a profound level of self awareness. As a visionary, he envisions a future where masculine leadership is regenerative, nature based, and relationship centric, oriented towards fostering intentional and authentic community. Soma Miller, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
How's life and the weather up in the Northwest right now? It looks like you're in a cabin with I am imagining like snow and cold weather outside.
It's not quite snow, but it's starting to get a little frosty out there. The Pacific, the southern part of Oregon is not, quite as cold and snowy as other parts of further north, but we have like a mild winter, and I love the change of seasons. It's really beautiful here. It's starting to get moist and everything is coming to life, and nice white frosty color on things this morning. So it feels good. Yeah.
That's something I miss about the U.S. this time of year. We're decorating for Christmas here, but there's no snow in Nairobi. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Right.
Christmas isn't that big here either. You're not going to see like a Santa Claus walking down the street or, whatever. And it's this time of year I miss being around family and decorating the tree together, and mom's making the home baked goods and, playing the Christmas music. I have a
Hmm.
longing to be back in the States right now, so I'm a bit jealous.
I feel you.
So,
Yeah.
would you tell us? So we're talking about men, and I like to ask men when I'm talking to them, what was your upbringing in terms of? Did you have a father present? Were you connected with him? What was your induction into manhood? And would you tell us that story?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I was really fortunate to have a father that was present my whole childhood. Um, and we had some challenges in terms of him having certain capacity to deal with my emotional needs as a kid. Which is maybe not wasn't fully his wheelhouse, but I would say that where my dad really excelled as a father figure was just his consistency, showing up for his family, choosing to, maybe a little too much at times, be self-sacrificial and in service and taking care of business, taking care of what's needed. And obviously there's the martyr end of the spectrum of that, that maybe he embodied a little bit, but ultimately the values that he instilled in us as children were somewhat around self-reliance, that we could kind of handle things, and I guess a certain capacity to uh, go out in the world and be self-supporting, which I did from a pretty young age. And and I think it wasn't so much like a lot of men. The way that we learn isn't so much from like what we're taught, but more about what's modeled to us. And he had a lot of integrity and just stood for what he stood for to some degree. He had his faults and flaws, like we all do. But I think what I really got from him, and he actually raised myself and my siblings from the point where I was 14 and on, when his my mother and he separated. So that was kind of a unique experience. And that's where, I think he really instilled in me, um, just what it means to show up as a father, to really choose sometimes the harder path, but what's needed to take care of your people in a way. So I'm super grateful for that. Um, Obviously, there he was not perfect as a dad, and I certainly had lessons in my own healing journey learned through some of the wounds also that were inflicted around just his tolerance, patience, his temperament, all those kinds of things definitely had an impact on me. Um, but I think overall he set a really good tone as a father figure. Yeah.
And what connects you to this crisis that we're talking about today, the isolation and modern masculinity? Is this something that you faced yourself? You see a lot of your men up that way facing this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things when I first started leading men's work about 7 years ago that I wanted to address head on. One of my mentors, Francis Weller, who, you know, when I first got into men's work when in my early 20s, about 20 years ago, um, one of the statements I would always hear him say is one of the great wounds of our culture, not necessarily just men, but culture in general, is that um, of not belonging, or like not feeling a sense of belonging. And what I notice in men is that's kind of a story that a lot of the men that I work with will just carry. It's like just a narrative that's just built into the psyche of, I'm not good enough. Um, and there's this kind of unconscious comparativeness that happens, no matter where the men are at in their stage of development or their level of success or this or that. There's often these kind of internalized narratives that in a way are what drives a man unconsciously in life. And this isolation epidemic is obviously, as we see, is kind of amplified in a way through social media, which is, kind of ironic because it's supposed to be this like connective social experiment, but somehow the more digitized we get, in a way, we get more connected, because I think we're missing that quality of authentic connection. And and I think the that lack of authenticity, that lack of being able to show up as we are without needing to bring forth some kind of persona to fit in, right? That drive to belong is so deep in us, which is understandable because we were we've evolved to live amongst community, within a tribe. And the if we didn't fit in with our people a long time ago, we literally wouldn't survive, right? We needed those deep connected bonds that helped us on many levels just to face the world. And currently we've kind of faced the physical level of survival with our material progress, but I think a lot of men are suffering and dying just due to the lack of, that emotional connection that comes from being able to be open and honest with other men in particular.
Yeah. How was it that, I mean, you mentioned that you've been leading men's work for about 7 or 8 years, I think. And what was your induction into men's work? And is that something that, I don't know, kind of gave you a revelation in terms of connection with other men?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, one of my first introductions into men's work, I think I was about 23, and I was living in Southern California at the time. And even at that age, I was maybe unique to how a lot of men are in terms of my development. And I was kind of a seeker at a pretty young age, and looking for direction, looking for answers, looking for a sense of, coherent experience in the world. I kind of see through the bullshit from a pretty young age. Um, and during that time, I was just super hungry for um, both, a sense of belonging, but also a sense of what it meant to be a man. Even though I had an awesome father figure, somehow there was still this kind of hunger in me that I listened to, and that led me to serendipitously encounter a men's community in Southern California, um, where they were running rite of passage types of experiences that were about a year long, and they were run by a gentleman named Francis Weller, psychotherapist, kind of in the post Robert Bly mythopoetic lineage of men's work. So, a lot of beautiful ritual, a lot of beautiful, you know, psycho emotional process that happened during that experience. But I think what impacted me the most was just being, not only just like being in the presence of other men, like without necessarily needing to do anything. There's something just nourishing about being in men's community that the the best way that I can describe it for men that have never experienced it is it's almost like this nutrient. It's almost like a kind of unknown fortification that happens on the soul level, however you want to talk about it. It's just like a something that comes together in the being experience that leaves an imprint, and a healthy one at that. So, and the other piece I would add to that is just um, finally feeling safe enough around other men to have permission to express my emotional needs, to express my emotional pains, to express the things that I was being challenged by in life without feeling ashamed of where I was at. That was incredibly valuable. And that experience in and of itself, with a group of 10 men that I went through this initiation with, created this deep sense of belonging, so much so that, that original men's community that I was part of, we met for about 14 years together as a men's group.
Yeah, there's being in mixed society, out amongst civilization. There's something you get like by just going into nature that you feel an exhale, and a
Yeah.
bit of home, and it can be that way in a group of men
Mhm.
as well. There's some part of at least some part of your mask you can leave behind. Okay, we're all guys here. We all kind of have a shared experience.
Mhm.
So now you take men into nature now, right? This is a big part of what you do.
Yep. Yeah, I've been for the last really for the last year. This is something that's been in the works for many years because I've always had a deep nature connection myself. But for the last year, I've been collaborating with a gentleman named Chris Kyle on a series of retreats called Emergence, and I think you guys interviewed him also for the summit. And
I think his interview is up. It's either today or tomorrow. Yeah, I think it's
cool.
today.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like you said, I would say the same thing is true that you mentioned around nature. Like there is this kind of exhale experience that's just in our primal biological function as humans that evolved in this very interconnected relational way with the natural world. So when men get out into nature, something just shifts emotionally, physiologically on all those levels. And beyond that, I really believe that nature is one of our greatest mentors. There's so much we can learn from just being in the natural world.
Hans goes out into the natural world on his bicycle for hours at a time, almost every day, wherever he is in the world.
That's
He's
awesome.
tried to talk me into it, but I have not yet taken up cycling.
Very cool.
Hans,
Yeah.
Hans, did you want to jump in here?
Well, I discover, I mean, independent of that, or maybe because of that, I am growing more and more into like, I was always a city slicker. And yeah, with time, and I just love spending more and more time into nature, you know. And I'm here in Medellin in Colombia, and it's a very busy city. And I had the chance to stay at a finca up in the hills, and I just came back because I just love it here. Just love it here.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. You may have more insight on that, but it just feels nicer. There's a rhythm. There's a rhythm to the day that's different, and I don't know. It gives me incredible peace and focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Yeah. I mean, I don't have much more to add because I think it is very much experiential. I'm sure there's more science on the subject that I haven't quite delved into, but um, the nervous system I find just kind of recalibrates the more attuned we are to the rhythms of nature, just to be able to not have artificial lights at night. And there are physiological things that literally happen because we're less in this artificial construction that's man-made, that helps just the whole human system function more effectively. Like you said, more focus, more relaxed, all those things.
Yeah, and I imagine that, well, if we go far enough out into nature or into the wilderness, we also have to be extra alert and extra aware, and our survival might be in question. And just that, unpredictable, unknown surrounding, kind of brings other, maybe, I don't know, sensory awareness online that perhaps makes you feel more
Michael and
alive.
sorry, Michael and I went to the Masamara a couple of years ago, and we have friends there. And I never, Michael was, well, first trying to get me to Africa, and I was like hesitant, reserved. And then on a safari, and I like safari, I'm whatever, and I can't tell, and I don't know why, but I would fully recommend people to do it. It has such an impact on me to see the vastness of the nature, but the animals too, to see lions and a couple of meters from you, hyenas, and is very profound. And I do not know what it is, but it affected me in a way, and it affects me till now in a way I was not expecting at all. And inexplainable also, but beautiful.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, there's something to say for being in wild environments where there is that threat present. And I've spent a significant amount of time alone in the wilderness, and there's certainly threats of like bears or mountain lions, things like that. However, I find I'm pretty relaxed, at least in like the US wilderness. I think if I was in the African safari region, I'd be probably a little less chill. Um, different type of wildness. Similarly, like we did a Costa Rica retreat this year at the beginning of the year, and um, Costa Rica has a bit of wildness and unpredictability that I'm not super familiar with, and there's just a lot of biological diversity there, including poisonous snakes and things like that. So I think I was definitely more alert there than typical, but I think there is something to say for what wilderness does bring online. I think there's a way that we can be relaxed in a sense, but also alert in a way that we don't often experience in our kind of domesticated life. And that's a quality that I think is really valuable for men to learn how to tap into. Like, how can we be sharp and with it super present, but not like, super high alert anxiety. And, to some degree, that might take practice. Some men that maybe have never been into the wilderness and just fully grew up as urbanites might have a hard time relaxing just with dirt around, Um, but I do think there is something quintessential about men in particular and their relationship with the wilderness that goes deeper than this lifetime, that I think is in our DNA. And I believe that bringing men out into those spaces, which is why we do it, activates that part of us in a way.
Yeah, especially sitting around a fire,
Mhm.
under the
Yeah.
stars.
So
There's
simple.
something hypnotizing about it. You can imagine that men have been hypnotized by fire for however long we've been around. However long fires existed, men sat around a
Mhm.
fire together, uh, cooking up the fresh kill, or huddling to get warm together or whatever. And yeah, it was something very, very primal about it. I remember being around the fire at some point with a group of guys, and someone made the observation, like, with evolution, well, perhaps any man that was not hypnotized by the fire, drawn to the fire, just he didn't survive.
Mhm.
He didn't pass on his genes. But those of us who were kind of, taken by the fire, maybe we're the ones that lasted. So, Soma, what is it that you guys do in nature? What is it that you take men out to do in nature?
Yeah. So, the particular theme that Chris and I kind of brought forth for these emergence retreats was really working with the concept of emergence, which is kind of a nature-based framework, um, or set of principles in a way where it's this quality of emergence. It shows up everywhere. It's sort of how nature occurs, is things evolve from one thing into the next and become something new. And we see that not just in natural systems, we even see it like in artificial intelligence. It's this constantly layering fractal like experience that shows up in these patterned ways. And so part of working with this quality of emergence is, in a way, not just immersing men in nature, which I think is like I said, part of what just turns on this new set of awarenesses and capacities, because nature, this is just my own theory, nature communicates in patterns. It's a pattern language. There's a different type of language than our very reductive, rational, particularly the English language, right? It like encapsulate things into these little boxes, right? And that's how language can really shape culture. And when we look at in indigenous cultures around the world, their language systems are much more evolved, where they might have 10 different words for one tree, during different seasons of the year, or depending on what type of things, herbs or something that I might be offering. Right? I'm speaking very generally here. So, I've personally been very fascinated by indigenous cultures from a young age. I've done a lot of Native American ceremonial work, and I think I had this natural affinity for these types of cultures, because I could intuitively sense that there was, a larger doctrine of experiential beliefs that were beyond this reductive, um, you know, colonizing way that we tend to see things as, modern white people. And so, um, and I, through my own experience and study, I found that nature communicates in these different tones and frequencies, and it shows up through pattern and through sound. And the nervous system has an incredible capacity to take in data from its environment when we're not living in our heads, if we're not in the kind of thinking mind that we've been trained to be in our Western educational system. Not that that isn't useful, but it kind of cuts us off from the deeper intuitive transmissions that can come from being in a natural environment. And so, this, I'm trying to put language to these things that are very experiential.
Maybe
What do
I
you
can
mean?
add,
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Michael.
maybe I can add what's the word I'm looking for? A story. But I had a friend who was um, mentored with Medicine Man. I want to say of the Lakawa Tekelma people from
Mhm.
from northwestern U.S. and
Yeah, it sounds like the
um,
people from around my region here. Yeah.
yeah, could be. And he and I were in the Andes Mountains of Argentina, and I was kind of apprenticing with him at the time, and I had just arrived there, and he took me out into the with no flashlight, just into the night. And we had a conversation, and the next morning he told me he was getting up early to go on a certain journey, and I awoke with him. There was no sunshine, so we're walking through pitch black. We walk up a mountain and down the other side and into this circle, and this is out in the middle of nowhere. And we turned and we just faced, I think we were facing west because the sun came up behind us. And as the sun came up, there was this huge shadow, like distinct, clear shadow of a great bird on the side of the mountain, which he said was a condor. It was pointing to the north with its face turned. And it was really profound. And he was explaining to me that um, a lot of indigenous peoples there would travel using the signs on the mountains or the signs of the rocks.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was all a bit much for me to take in and make sense of. But
Mhm.
yeah, just throwing that out
Yeah,
there.
no, it's
Um,
interesting, and that's the thing, is like I would say that this type of wisdom tradition doesn't work in the same kind of linear way of thinking that we're conditioned into, right? So, but when we can start to actually adopt a way of thinking, being, and seeing the world that is more reflective of the patterns in nature, then these things will start to make sense on a deeper kind of primal intuitive level. And I just want to follow up and kind of respond to, like, what do we do with men in nature? We do a number of different types of rituals that um, train men to practice these nature-based principles, which, one of which is, deep listening. How do we learn to really listen? And that's, we try to adopt these principles in a way that also applies to kind of every other part of our lives. Like, what is it, how does learning how to really deeply listen, and that's not just with our ears, but with all of our senses, right? How do we be fully embodied and attuned to, like I said, the data, the information that's being transmitted to us all around us. And there are sensors in our bodies, in our nervous systems that are designed to pick up this information and take it in, which allows us to actually make better decisions in life, to be more clear and coherent in how we move forward, because we're not just trying to figure things out from our minds, which is a
Yeah.
very limited data set, right?
Yeah.
So,
Not only do we over rely on our rational brains and all the conditioning we intake in the process, but we're trained to not pay attention to other signals from our body.
Mhm.
If you're a little boy in school and you have an instinct to go climb the tree outside, that's just going to get you in trouble.
Right.
Or if you want to even, I don't know, stand up for something,
Mhm.
you feel called to, I don't know, stand up and defend someone or something. The world around us is you're supposed to just follow the rules, obey, do what you're told, listen to the authority, and just do what you're told. Not and to not listen to all this, let's say, inner guidance.
Mhm. 100%. Yeah, it's a top-down approach to self-governance, and the body knows. If anybody that's listening is familiar with the book, like the body keeps the score. It's all about how trauma gets stored in the nervous system. And I think, just to bring it back to why it's so fascinating to be in these very wild places, is because nature, if we see a cheetah or a zebra out in the safari somewhere, like, nature in general knows how to process its own trauma. Like an animal that gets attacked will kind of shake it out of their body and their nervous system, and they don't spend the rest of their lives walking around all stiff trying to deal with and function with life. And so I think that that's the gift of nature and wildness, is we actually get to see a reflection of this kind of unadulterated animal experience in some cases.
Mm.
I was very interested when you say that nature, I'm paraphrasing, nature speaks in patterns or in different patterns.
Mhm.
And I was wondering like to get a clearer picture of what that is. And this image came to mind, or this memory came to mind with me when uh, I was on a Canary Island, and with a friend, we were experimenting with mushrooms,
Mhm.
and I went out in nature, and it was incredible. And I saw nature in patterns, real patterns. Like the beach where we were was like a carpet with like returning patterns. The sea, the waves, there was really, I would say, patterns to it. Like almost mathematically.
Mhm.
Well, it's something I didn't realize before. And even the stars, I could see. I could see like the distances between the stars and how they were connected. And
Mhm.
is did I see and experience something there that you refer to when you say nature speaks in different patterns?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think my first experiences with psychedelics, from probably too young of an age where I should have been taking them, but they woke me up to that language. And yeah, they help you to see the kind of infinite fractal based nature patterns that are existing everywhere. I mean, if you look at your arm right now, and you'll see the same kind of branching pattern that you would see if you kind of looked out my window. I don't know how clear it is, but of the trees, right? Or the same branching pattern that's in a lightning bolt.
That was actually the main thing. I went outside and just trees or even bushes. I could look inside, and I'm not joking. I saw like the whole like cosmos in a way,
Mhm.
like it was infinite, intricate. It
Yeah.
was incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and that's more the truth of our true vision, right? And our normal way of seeing is very cut off, because we're almost like hyper focused. And psychedelics have a way of opening us to see this kind of mathematical organization that is nature. And the truth is, we are also that, right? Remembering that we're made of those same design patterns from creation, and we can learn how to live and act more from that place. And that's kind of what this quality of emergence is about. How do we kind of retrain ourselves to be adaptive and resilient based on these natural principles?
So, yeah, so can you share, I don't know, maybe an exercise that you guys do, or what about connecting with each other out in nature as men or brothers? Our theme here is isolation.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, one form of connection is connecting to nature, but what about connecting? And then there's connecting to ourselves, but what about connecting to the other men?
Yeah, good. Yeah, so I'm glad you named that first piece, because yeah, I think part of our isolation, I'm just going to emphasize this, is because we're disconnected from nature. There's this whole living, breathing world around us that any of us can feel a sense of belonging in the great, grand scheme of creation if we open up to it, right? So those relationships are available through the natural world. And also, we're humans and we need human connection. That's also biologically wired into us. And a lot of us didn't get our connection needs growing up. We have certain biological attachment needs, and many many men were not treated in the ways they needed to feel sufficiently cared for on all levels, mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically, um, and relationally. And so, we this is also another like retraining. Like, how do we bring men together in communities, in connection, and teach them how to be more honest with each other, be more real, be present. And so we will take men out into nature and do exercises, and some of them might be dyadic, so two men standing together, and in that pair, sometimes there's just the sharing that comes from not even saying anything, right? We often think that we need to speak to feel connected. So there is a way of connection beyond the verbal dialogue that, and sometimes is the most profound, just men looking eye to eye with each other, and with some prompts allowing them to kind of open up to the depth and vulnerability that's possible when you're just fully there in the present moment with another man. um, with that, there's also tools, language tools that we can use to prompt deeper openness, deeper vulnerability, deeper shares. And so often we'll support men to share something that they might not have normally shared, like, you know, what I see in you, or what I trust about you, or what I don't trust about you. So some of these things can be very edgy, particularly because we're kind of taught in this culture to bullshit, to just like not really tell the truth. And so we try to create prompts that invite men to speak to the deeper truths that exist in them, but maybe they've been too afraid to share.
Mm.
And that, just to kind of bring it around, is that that experience of not belonging is really where we in a way, abandon ourselves to be in relationship, where we say, this part of me is not okay. I'm going to put that over here, and I'm only going to wear this persona, this kind of mask when I relate to other men. And so, the invitation with these prompts is to take off the mask, share the thing that we don't want to share. Like one of the prompts we might give is what I don't want to share about myself with you. Something that scares the shit out of me to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And that, it's incredible, even just in the first hour of a men's retreat, the level of openness that can occur just with those simple exercises, where men, all of a sudden, they didn't know each other an hour before. They're like in tears with each other,
Yeah.
It's super powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. As I've organized this event, a number of people have remarked to me, because the size of audience I would have loved to have had here is a lot bigger than what I've actually managed to gather. And so a number of people have remarked, if this was a women's retreat, it would be jam-packed. They would have told that all their friends, they would have brought all their friends. And it does seem a bit more difficult to get men together. Do you find that where you are, and with you have a business working with men, so is that your experience as well, that it's challenging, and what do you find it is that draws them in?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad to acknowledge that that's getting acknowledged, because I think it is hard for men to kind of step through that gate or step over the threshold of a different kind of experience, a different kind of relating, and I think it does take a certain kind of coaxing, a certain consistency. I think consistency is big for men. Like, I think the trust guards are so high for men that they need to like have an experience of you. They need to feel there's I think a deep devotion to the whatever the offering is. And again, I think it needs to be modeled, because I think actually men are maybe more intuitive than we give them credit for, right? So the bullshit meters are high, and maybe there's less risk aversion in men and their protection over like time, energy, attention, and money. That's kind of our resource net. And so, I think what I've learned, I guess, is it's a matter of two pieces. It's like, just a deep, heartfelt invitation that acknowledges where men are struggling, speaks to where they're hurting in a really honest way, in a way where it might be required to lead with that same level of vulnerability. Like, I'm hurting too, this is fucking hard. Yeah. Go ahead, Hans.
Michael and Soma, wouldn't it be as simple an explanation as in the same way that men don't, they don't want to ask for directions.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to ask for help, even though, and I think that the speed with which men do open up once they pass the gate, it both speaks to probably the work that Soma is doing, but also to the deep physical yearning among men for brotherhood,
Mm-hmm.
physical, because the mind is saying, I got this, the mind is saying, I could do it alone, I don't need this. But the body yearns for it. I mean, I know, I can tell now in hindsight, it was my main yearning. My whole life is brothers, is allies. And when someone like Michael comes along and he's an ally to me, is such a profound gift, that I can only say that it's a deep physical yearning to have brothers, to be among brothers, and our head will will maybe keep us from walking through that gate. But once men are there, I have the same experience. Once men are there, they open up and it's like, yeah, let's go.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I totally agree. I think the conditioning around self-sufficiency, right? Like, I don't need help. I got this, even clearly we don't. And yeah, once you're through the gate, something opens up that's bigger and allows that kind of, I feel like it's a healing experience for a lot of men because we're past grade school and generally don't have friends.
What is it? I mean, if maybe you could share a bit vulnerably, what is it that's kept you in the past or the present? I don't know, from connecting more with men.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's the piece that we just spoke to.
Those barriers, right?
Yeah. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, was there more you wanted to add just beyond?
No, I was just saying we probably all have those barriers, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm no different. I'm still, it's like to some degree, I believe we, especially as teachers and facilitators, we kind of teach and need to practice what we need the most, right? And I don't think it's coincidental that like the tagline for my business that just kind of came through was like the age of the lone wolf is over. And I think I was, like I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, whether it was cultural or familial, I was kind of conditioned for self-reliance. Like I don't want to need anyone because that's too risky, right? It's too risky for me to rely on other people because I might get hurt, I might get abandoned in the process. And so if I can just handle all my own shit, then, I'll be good. I don't have the risk of facing that emotional pain of abandonment. And so that was my practice for a long time. And, I still practice that to some degree. And to some ways it's served me. But also it's cut me off from that kind of emotional nourishment that comes from letting myself receive, letting myself be supported, not needing to like shoulder the burden of all the difficult adversity that life brings. And so, yeah, I've really struggled when I'm struggling in particular to ask for help. Still do. It's like takes a lot of effort for me to say, like, call a bro. And I've got hundreds of men on my list of like, I know they would be there for me from all the years of men's work that I've done, a lot of community. And still, I protect those parts of me that really genuinely need help. And I'll just say one thing that really impacted me recently, just bringing it back to my father. I was going through a difficult time over the last few years with my own daughter and my relationship to her, and just a disconnect that was happening with us. She's a teenager now. She just turned 18. And, one of the best things my dad ever said to me was, hey, if you need to call me and we can just sit in silence, just be on the phone together. We don't even need to talk. And that, I'm feeling emotional sharing that because it was such a, like, sometimes we just need the presence of other men. That's the most healing thing.
Yeah. Are you saying you extended that same invite to your daughter?
No, I mean, it is an open invitation to her, but that's a good inspiration. But no, I'm just saying that my dad offered that to me in a time of difficulty, and in a time where I was even probably too unclear of like what kind of support I needed, like where do I need help? Like he knew I was struggling, and that offering was super valuable.
Yeah.
Super valuable. Call me in the middle of the night. We can just be on the phone together.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Soma, you guys, you and Chris, you guys are getting a group together. Is it in January, February?
So we're doing another retreat in Costa Rica next year at the beginning of April. Another
Okay, beginning of
emergence retreat. Yeah.
Costa Rica. How long is
Yep.
the retreat?
The retreat is going to be 5 days. So, for the men that are traveling from the States, we really want to make it worth the trip, get a deep experience of the beauty of the natural world in Costa Rica. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a beautiful place for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, let's see. I'll give you the final word. Just want to remind everyone that we've been here all week over on the main website, callingallmensummit.com. We're interviewing 50 men and about 20 of them here on the live channel. And when you choose to own, you can attend for free, but if you choose to own the full library of interviews, it also comes with a lot of trainings from a lot of our mentors. And Soma, we had asked you to do a training, but we're still hooking up our membership group. So we'll invite you back next week or the week after to do a short training and interaction with the men there. And just want to let the men know, that you can go further with this summit into brotherhood and mentorship, get an experience of working with some of these different mentors like Soma, like Hans as well. And feel welcome. Yes, and share this event with a brother, tag a brother, maybe with an invitation to go off into nature, sit around the campfire. Soma, so not your last message to men, but maybe we can close off with a message to men.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think just to summarize a little bit of what we talked about, my invitation for men is to take some time to do the kind of self-study work and do the kind of self-study that is relational both to other men and to the natural world. And there's so much healing potential that's available. There's so much growth potential that's available there. And I think as men, we tend to want to think practically, like, how will this help me, like out in this world, this world where I have been kind of conditioned to operate in a certain way. How can I bring these kind of different ways of relating to the world out into, say, my intimate relationships or to my professional life? And my take on it is all this stuff is absolutely practical and essential to how we relate intimately, which I know a lot of men struggle with. And these tools, which have to be practiced, it's not just a theoretical thing. It's not like you just go listen to a podcast and like, boom, I've got it. So men need to have experiences, just like boys need to have experiences roughhousing in order to learn boundaries and empathy, right? That they miss out on. We sometimes we need to recreate these types of experiences with men, particularly if we haven't gotten them, especially if these wild natural parts of us have been conditioned out. And so my message to men is like, seek out environments that are with other men and that both bring a quality of challenge, that aren't just there to make you feel safe and comfortable, but also there's enough safety where you can bring forth these more vulnerable parts of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. What do you say, Hans? I don't think you got enough roughhousing growing up.
Say again?
I don't think you got enough roughhousing growing up.
I don't remember Soma talking about roughhousing, and it's certainly not an invitation for you, Michael. No, I was here the past month with two of my allies, and here in beautiful nature in the mountains here maybe I'll show it. We're in the mountains above Medellin,
Oh, wow.
and it's like, it's what you say, it's just the presence of other men, who kind of look in the same direction as you, is very healing, and it was an incredible reminder to me, like, why am I not always in this container, just for them to be there. And we were figuring out how to live together intentionally and create a growth house. And we used this month to create it. But so there was nothing much else than each other's presence and dedication to thrive and grow, and it was beautiful. It was just beautiful and very healing. And yeah, I understand and the importance of your work, Soma. And yeah, I thank you also for doing it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for showing up and creating those alliances and modeling that. It's so important for men to see that it's possible.
Yeah, Soma, thank you for your time, and we look forward to maybe doing a training with you in the next week or two. Chris has already done one with us, your co-facilitator of your Essential Man. Am I saying that right, Essential Man?
Yeah, the Essential Man is like the broader organization, and Emergence are sort of the sub retreats.
Your emergence events. Right. Yes. Thank you so much. All right, gentlemen. Have a great weekend. And Hans, I will see you back here in the morning tomorrow, 10 a.m. Facebook.com/Calling All Men Summit. Thanks again, Soma. Have a good evening.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good to be here. Yeah.
Thank you.